Hey everybody. I'm going to show you how the different size of the pans does make a difference. We're playing 28 hertz, I think, and this is a 40 millimeter containment, and I'll drop it down to the 30. And you'll see the 30 doesn't conform to the same pattern. I didn't turn anything up or turn anything down yet. Add some more water to it though. But you could see the difference is, gotta turn it down. This one's more like a cross pattern in this size. So it didn't really do anything. We just changed the size from 30 millimeters to 20 millimeters. Now we'll go up to 40 millimeters. The 20 and the 10 won't work. Those are for very high frequencies. Pretty much add the same amount of water as the fluid as the other one. And you can see it's too loud right now. So we'll just turn it down. And we do get, well, what you do see is a cross pattern, but technically what's really happening is it would be because of the frames per second, you're not really grasping the full imagery, so it switches around a lot. Let's see if I can get it again. Just barely turning up the volume right now. And then when it starts doing that, you want to turn it down just a tiny bit, just to capture it. My light is a little close right now. If I add a little more water, it should help it. This is one of my followers or friends on Facebook too. It's Daniel Frutte. He was doing a live session and I'm just playing it right now. So you could see this image just by adding a little bit of water. Kind of changed a lot. If I turn it up, almost does a three-sided pattern. This tells me that I probably need to take tiny bits of water out with a eyedropper here, not a dirty one. When you take more water out, you got to turn it up more. And now that I took out the water, getting a little bit better imagery. If I was using my high-speed camera, and this is probably like maybe like an 1/8 inch of water or less. It's very little amount of water here. You remember, I have to turn it up a little bit more. You can see the frames per second kind of messing with everything, how it's jumbling around. The four sides are still there. It's just, you know, the little bit of space difference makes a huge difference. A little bit of water, adding a drop at a time, like I just did, will help kind of stabilize the image a little bit more for more detail. Since this is in a filming mode, it's gonna like do this. When you're in a camera mode, it doesn't do this as much, and you can take some really cool pictures. Right now I'm using the microscope lighting setup with just plastic colored filter over it. Orange, yellow, purple, and red. You can see those colors are kind of bleeding out. And then now we're going to change to the next size. So this was 50 millimeters. So we're going to change this to 60 now.
Thank you, everyone. Just read some of the comments.
You can see I added just a little bit more water, and now I got to turn it down.
Thanks for hanging out. Stay on for a bit longer.
And now you see that it's kind of getting to the point to where it's a little bit breaking up on the outside there. So because it's breaking up on the outside,
It's been a long time since I've been here.
I'm going to turn him down real fast. Actually, I'm going to turn that off and then explain what's happening. So now we have more space. Now the cymatic has more circumference to kind of bounce around, and what it's doing is it's going to, if I kind of stop it, let me see if we can get that 4-star like the 4-sided pattern back. You have to turn it down very carefully, and that's pretty much it with how this frequency is working out with the way the frames per second is doing that. But look, we got the 4 symbols, 4-sided shape again. But if I were to, let's see, which water we got in here? Take some water out real fast. Amplify it. I'm really having to amplify it a lot. I took I guess too much water out. But you'll get a better image. Just gotta turn it up a lot. Now you can see the 4. I didn't change anything but the volume. So we're getting a different, way more sided imagery because we have more space to come out to. So if I switch it to now the 60, you'll start to see that these frequencies at this range are starting to be a little bit too low. now the water's really jumbling around a lot. I'm going to turn it way down. And because my light is so close, you see the imagery is much thicker. And now we're getting, again, the star image, a little more pronounced, 5-sided and probably a 10-sided. It's really what's happening. I'm going to zoom out a little. So now you could see the 5-sided stars mixing with probably a 10-sided image. So we still haven't changed the frequency, we've just been changing the size of the pan. So we've gone down from just 20 millimeter, which is 4 sides, 30 millimeter, which is about probably 8 to 10 sides, and then the same thing keeps on repeating itself here, except for we're back down to, for sure, 5 and 10. So let's turn down my light setting a little. Sometimes that will help. And I'm going to turn down this light. Turn up the camera light. So we still gonna go to, let's try, oh shit, we skipped one. We skipped the 60, so this is 70. Let's go back down, because I'm lame, to 60. We'll just dump this water all in there. And we'll get a little bit of the sides wet there and see what we get. Looks like it's a little bit too amplified. To me, there's too much water in there, really. And then we'll amplify it. You can see the light language in the background, especially if I turn off my other light. And now we're getting more of the 4-sided symmetry. So all we've been doing is just changing the volume and changing the size from 10 millimeters, and we're seeming just to get the images to change. Now we're getting a little bit different symmetry here. I'm going to turn it down. It looks like it wants to almost go to a 3, but this is an interesting thing when this starts to happen. There's either too much water or too little water. So I would start taking out a little bit of water. You can see the light language right there. This exposed white LED that you can get the light language to look like that. And that's with the lower volume. See, when you turn down the volume, you get your light ring, and you just turn it up a little. To me, this is like encoding information that is the language that creates geometry. I mean, it really is something that humans have been around water forever, and we looked at rivers and we've been around it. So there you go, right there. So we took out some water and we amplified it, and we get a little bit more better symmetry and stuff. We're definitely getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there you go, 5 and 10. So let's change the size back to the 70. So that was 60. We're going to go to 70 now. Once we get to a certain thing, the frequency will be too low for the pan, but I tried to pick out a frequency in the low 20, like kind of mid 20s, that would work okay. So now this is back to the 70 here. We'll see what that does. Amplify it a little. It looks like it wants to make the cross symbol four-sided, but it probably, I don't know, it's doing some, looks like I need to try amplifying it. You've got to be a little bit patient with when it's doing this, because the patterns can take a few seconds to kind of form there. So you see that it's too loud, or it's too much space in the pan now. You'll start to see that the image wants to fractal out, and the best you'll get is about right there before it starts to do that. But we're going to take out some water. Alright, so we're a real thin layer of water here. I'm amplifying it. And there you go. The water depth isn't correct for the larger pans. You're going to get a lot of movement in the water. So you really have to lessen that water to get a little bit more detail. You see, I took out the water, but I didn't change the volume, but now I need to add more volume because I took water out. But I'll be able to get a little bit better symmetry. Not sure if I can count this. 1, 2, it's flickering around a lot. It's definitely more than 10. Looks like 12. But it could be more. So, once again, that was the 70. And we're still at 28 hertz. And now we're going to change the pan size to 80. Get the 90 out. So you may have to add the water in there to get it to sit in correctly, but then you're going to have to take the water back out. Definitely want to only, like, when you're doing in bigger pans, you'll get a little bit way better detail with less water in there. I mean, you'll actually get an image without it being just so scattered. You get the cool light language though. Let's zoom out a little bit more. And I'm using my microscope camera, the one that I sell on the internet, on the website. And you can see, look at the pattern, it's trying to create itself there a little bit. I'll try amplifying it. Once you start getting past a certain amplification, it's going to start breaking apart. So either I could try to take out more water again, which there's not that much water in here to take out. Now a very thin layer of water. And sometimes I'll start to add water in there as I go, and I can see that that's starting to be too loud. So we could turn that down and try to balance that out. Trying to balance that out is kind of right around there. We can add all the water we want and fill it up. And you see when the pan is full now, it acts like volume. So now we turn it back down. And sometimes with more water in some of these pans, you get the frequency works correctly. So you have to try experimenting with everything, really. That's how, I learned to do this by trial and error. So now we got the four-sided symbol popping up here, and all we did was add water and turn down the volume. And we're getting a little bit more color separation from the lens because we have more space now. I have one more before this one, actually. Oh shit, that is the one. We'll go up to 100. So that was the 80. This is the 90. So these are just 10 millimeters apart, and you could obviously see that it's making a difference. So like I said, especially when you start getting up into higher frequencies, these larger pans are not going to really work that great. They really work better with lower frequencies. And there's like a bubble or something in there still. And we're going to amplify it. And turn it down a little. And so now we're getting, looks to me like a six-sided star. And so that was the same amount of water because I just dumped it in there. Didn't add anything or take anything out. The last one was a four-sided. So let's take some of this water out now and go thinner. And we're going to amplify this. Now if you're just looking for geometry, this is why one or a couple pans will work, because there's only so many forms of geometry. But if you're understanding frequencies and you're trying to understand their behaviors, especially in electronics, if I was going to make a coil or something, the size of the coil matters. So this is why I look at these frequencies at different ratios. So we're still amplifying it. And with less water, it's not as crisp of an image. It's a little bit needs more, I can tell. And so you see how the spacing gets a little bit more detailed there. Like if this was not in the film mode and more like a camera mode, you would probably get a crisper, more looking image. And you'd probably want to turn this down a little because I could see it breaking apart now. You want to get it right around there. It looks like it's spinning, but it's not, people. What's happening is the frames per second shift. And when it starts to shift, it starts to make it look like it's spinning. but the water's not spinning in this direction. You know what it's happening. There's millions of vortexes in here lifting the water, creating the imagery. There's a bunch of spinning things in there, but the water itself isn't in a full rotation like that. That's the frames per second shifting, making it look like that. A lot of cymatics has been misunderstood that way. Under a high-speed camera, you would get a crisp image that is solid and not moving around. And you would need at least a 500 or so frames per second camera to do that. Alright, so let's go up to 100 now. I have all the way up to 150, but we just went through 20 millimeters to 100 millimeters. And we didn't change the frequency. All we did was adjust the water, and it seems that most of the pans work better with less water, unless you're in a different frequency zone where more water would be required. And I could see that this 100 is definitely breaking apart the frequency, and you're going to see more rings and everything in this pan because of that. All the space is allotted there, so the frequency has more space to move along its own vibration, breaking up the center imagery and then fractaling outwards. And in between, when you start to understand all this, really it's just a bunch of vortexes spinning around, balancing themselves. They're pushing up in different directions and pathways. And we're going to try turning this down a little more. I don't think this pan's going to work too good with this frequency. I'd have to go down, so let's change the frequency. We're at 19 hertz, and you'll see that 19 hertz is a little bit more stabilized because it's a bigger frequency. And if we drop it down to 10 hertz, it looks like it's moving inwards, and it's not. This is where you may have to have more water inside there so it can actually move around better. See that? I didn't add very much. But it acts like volume. So if something's not working for you, you may want to add more water instead of volume. Or sometimes you take out the water and then add more volume. The bigger pans are a little bit more delicate, so you have to be patient with them. And you got to figure out the right ratio of water. This is probably a little too much. I'll get better results with a little bit less and more volume. I'll move it up to 13 hertz. Oops, I took too much out. Turning it down. That one wants to become like a three-sided pattern. Let me show you what happens when we go up too high in these pans. You're going to get a lot of fractal imagery like this, but some of it will look cool. See, this is 32 hertz. So we're kind of higher frequencies for this 100 mil pan. And this is 70 hertz. And you can see how everything's kind of way more fractaled out in this size containment. It's going to be too hard to get this frequency to show anything besides these checker patterns. But I will show you what it looks like in a smaller containment, like the 30 mil. Since it's 30 mils. Get my lighting correct. I'm going to zoom in. Normally, if I'm using the smaller containers, I like to have the light a little bit higher. Right now I'm about probably 16, 18 inches away. Even with this containment at 30 mils, it's going to be a little bit tricky to get one image from it. I just have water in my speaker, if you're wondering what that is back there in the background. Take out a bunch of water. This is the copper filament pan, 30 millimeters. This video is getting really long. Let's add more water. Sometimes I know that this smaller container does cool stuff when you fill it up, and the water will move. That's almost full to the top. This is 80 something hertz. Let's turn it down. There we go. It's a lot, you know, there's a lot of patience that comes with this stuff. Don't expect to just like jump on and in and be like, oh, it's so easy. It took me like 4 years to learn how to do all this. So I just felt like it was such a tough experience building them and making them and keep on trying to figure them out each time, that it would be easier if more people did this. it would, you know, get more information out there. But a lot of people just like the imagery. I mean, I like the imagery, but I do it for different reasons. You see that when the water's deeper, it's going to make a little bit the image a little bit thicker like that. So this was a 30, but if I change this to the 40, oh no, this is the 50 because this is the 40. I have all the room in there now to turn this down. Whoops, wrong one. I feel like my light is so close. You'll see a lot of like that kind of thing happening where you're getting like a lot of light on your image. It's because the light is too close or it's too bright. See if I turn it down. Not sure if that's going to help me. Really what it is I need to if I'm going to do that, I would need to move my light. I would move my light personally. I'm in the middle of filming super long ass video, and once we get down to, what is this, 30 something hertz, this little pan can do some cool stuff. I'm going to take out some water, and we're going to turn it up, and my outer light is reflecting off the water like that. Sometimes you got to turn off the other lights in the room. Zoom out, focus. The flickering really messes with the imagery a lot. It's kind of annoying. But then my high-speed camera doesn't have any audio, so I gotta get like a screen capture program or something and use that one. See, we're getting really close to the frames per second. It's 34, 33, 32. You'll see that it starts to, it's 31. Once you get closer to the frames per second, it doesn't move around as much. You can get a little more solid imagery out of it. Like I said, if this wasn't filming, it wouldn't be doing that as much with just the camera mode itself. In film mode, you have to almost match frequencies and frames per second. While a higher speed camera, you can adjust the aperture and the exposure. But it does a lot of shifting with the frames per second like that. Sometimes adding a second frequency really close to it underneath can stop that a little too. So mostly a lot of more lower frequencies will always work better in lots of different size ranges. But once you start going higher up in the frequencies, only certain pans are going to work. And the smaller pans aren't going to work so much for the lower frequency. We're at 27 hertz, and this is the 50 millimeter, so it works pretty good. You could see a cool five-sided image there. I'm going to stop this now, but that's going over the pan sizes, let alone changing all the shapes. So the shapes makes even big difference. And I'll go over that in another one.